accustomed during 200 years to the unlimited possession and exercise of irresponsible power, the love of it has become stronger by habit. To assume that this feeling of pride and power has died out and disappeared from the South is to assume a miracle. Any man who tells you that it has died out or has ceased to be exercised and made effective tells you that which is untrue, and in the nature of things could not be true. Not only is the love of power there, but a talent for its exercise has been fully developed. This talent makes the old master class of the South not only the masters of the Negro, but the masters of Congress, and if not checked, will make themselves the masters of this nation. It was something more than an empty boast in the old times, and it was said that one slave master was equal to 3 northern men. Though this did not turn out to be true on the battlefield, it does seem to be true in the councils of the nation. In sight of all the nations, these ambitious men of the South had dared to take possession of the government which they with broad blades and bloody hands sought to destroy. In sight of all the nation, they have disregarded and trampled upon the Constitution and organized parties on sectional lines. From the ramparts of the solid South with the 153 electoral votes in the Electoral College, they have dared to defy the nation to put a Republican in the presidential chair for the next 4 years, as they once threatened the nation with civil war if it elected Abraham Lincoln. With this grip on the presidential chair, with the House of Representatives in their hands, with the Supreme Court deciding every question in favor of the states as against the powers of the federal government, denying to the government the right to protect the elected franchise of its own citizens, they may not well feel themselves masters not only of the former slaves, but of the whole situation. With these facts before us, tell me not that the Negro is safe in the possession of his liberty. Tell me not that power will not assert itself. Tell me not that they who despise the Constitution they have sworn to support will respect the rights of the Negro, whom they already despise. Tell me not that men who thus break faith with God will be scrupulous in keeping faith with poor Negro laborers of the South. Tell me not that the people who have lived by the sweat of other men's faces and thought themselves Christian gentlemen while doing it will feel themselves bound by principles of justice to their former victims and their weakness. Such a pretense in face of the facts is shameful, shocking, and sickening, yet there are men in the North who believe all of this. Well, may it be said that Americans have no memories. We look over the House of Representatives and see the solid South enthroned there. We listen with calmness to eulogies of the South and of the traitors and forget Andersonville. We look over the Senate and see the senator from South Carolina and we forget Hamburg. We see Robert Smalls cheated out of his seat in Congress and forget the planter and the service rendered by the colored troops in the late war for the Union. Well, the nation may forget. It may shut its eyes to the past and frown upon any who may do otherwise, but the colored people of this country are bound to keep fresh a memory of the past till justice shall be done from them in the present. When this shall be done, we shall, as readily as any other part of our respected citizens, plead for an act of oblivion. We are often confronted of late in the press and on the platform with the discouraging statement that the problem of the Negro as a free man and a citizen is not yet solved, that since his emancipation, he has disappointed the best hopes of his friends and fulfilled the worst predictions of his enemies, and that he has shown himself unfit for position assigned him by the mistaken statesmanship of the nation. It is said that physically, morally, socially, and religiously, he is in a condition vastly more deplorable than was his condition as a slave, and that he has not proved himself so good a master to himself as his old master was to him, that he is gradually but surely sinking below the point of industry, good manners, and civilization to which he attained in a state of slavery, that his industry is fitful, that his economy is wasteful, that his honesty is deceitful, that his morals are impure, that his domestic life is beastly, that his religion is fetishism, and his worship is simply emotional, and that, in a word, he is falling into a state of barbarism. Such is the distressing description of the emancipated Negro as drawn by his enemies, and it is found reported in the journals of the South. Unhappily, however, it is a description not confined to the South. It has gone forth to the North. It has crossed the ocean. I met with it in Europe, and it has gone as far as the wings of the press and the power of speech can carry it. There is no measuring the injury inflicted upon the Negro by it. It cools our friends, heats our enemies, and turns away from us much of the sympathy and aid which we need and deserve to receive at the hands of our fellow men. But now comes the question: is this description of emancipated Negro true? In answer to this question, I must say yes and no. It is not true in all its lines and specifications and to the full extent of the ground it covers, but it certainly is true in many of its important features. And there is no race under heaven of which the same would not be equally true with the same antecedents and the same treatment which the Negro is receiving at the hands of this nation and the old master class to which the Negro is still a subject.
Well, notice that you've gone in the prison population from 1.5 million to 2 million now. And that's because the facilities, the prison facilities themselves, are motivated to keep the prisoners in jail, not to rehabilitate them, not to avoid recidivism. What they do is they have a method where they keep them in longer by adding to their sentence. They'll say if you violate, you in public prisons you get time off for good behavior. They get time added for bad behavior. So they'll push these people, and when they react, they'll give them additional time for bad behavior to hold them in prison longer. So the whole thing is adding to our prison population unbelievably. And the worst of all, in my opinion, is what's happening in the juvenile facilities that are run by these private corporations. The ACLU sued the Walnut Grove GEO-run facility in Mississippi. The juveniles were kicked, punched while handcuffed. They were stripped naked and placed in solitary confinement for weeks. Can you imagine placing juveniles in solitary confinement for weeks? One juvenile was held hostage in his cell for 24 hours. He was brutally raped and assaulted, and prison guards refused to help. They brought a lawsuit against them, and they joined together with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they got a phenomenal settlement it was a groundbreaking settlement. They got a ruling that juveniles have to be housed separately, and that they banned the use of solitary confinement in the case of juveniles. The U.S. Justice Department did a report on this. They studied Mississippi, and they studied these private institutions in Mississippi. They found that the state showed deliberate indifference in 7 areas, including sexual misconduct between guards and inmates, excessive use of force, excessive use of chemical agents, youth-on-youth violence and sexual assault, and seriously inadequate medical and mental health care facilities. This is on juveniles. And they said, at the conclusion of their report, they said sexual misconduct at this juvenile facility was among the worst they've seen in any facility in the United States. It's absolutely horrendous.
Absolutely. Howard, thank you for telling us this story. The private prison industry, they're making headlines every day. I'm glad we finally got to discuss this, and thank you very much for telling us about it.